Hello and welcome to the Practical Creative Podcast, where I talk to people about the how and why of creativity. I want to know more about their materials, their processes, what it is that motivates or inspires them to keep creating. I'm also interested in exploring the practicalities of being a creative person. And in this series of the podcast, I'm exploring the business of creativity, the skills and mindsets creatives use to share, promote, and sell their work. I'm Jeremiah Craigie, and in this episode I'll be talking with Catherine Orer. Catherine is an award-winning business and PR strategist and founder of The Artist Entrepreneur, where she counsels professional visual artists and creative entrepreneurs who want to build sustainable businesses and careers. This was a fantastic conversation, just chock full of practical, actionable strategies that you can use to help move your creative career forward. We cover a brilliant range of topics, including the importance of identifying your core values as an artist, how these values can help you to then identify and connect with, and even sell to, your ideal audience. We dig into what it means to be a brand, and why it may not be as negative as you think. We talk about the basic formula for making sales, the importance of educating your audience, and so much more. This really is a treasure trove of information, so please enjoy this episode of the Practical Creative Podcast.
That's perfect. Yes, that's how I'm feeling. I have my chamomile with me and I'm just ready to go.
Fantastic. Okay, so the first thing then would be to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Catherine Orer. I'm really happy to be invited here today. I'm the founder of The Artist Entrepreneur. I'm a business and PR strategist, and I help artists and creatives build creatively and personally fulfilling businesses. So I've been doing this for a long time. I help really artists get clear on their vision, what they want to do, how they want to build a business, and actually follow through to get the results that they want.
Fantastic. So why artists? Why make that your focus? Because as I understand, you come from a more corporate background. So I'm curious to know why you've chosen to focus on probably a clientele who probably don't have as much money as a corporate client would.
Yes, a lot of people have thought, and some people still think I was out of my mind to start this business, but actually it's the best thing I've ever done in my life, and I'm so grateful to have made that leap. I would say, without giving you the whole history, when I was in college, I wanted to study in the arts, not as an artist, but I wanted to be an art historian. I wanted to be a curator in museums, but my art history teacher, of all people, told me, don't go into the arts. You'll never make money. I'm going to talk to you as if you were my daughter. You have so much potential. Please do something else. So, I can remember that day as if it was yesterday. I was standing by his desk. I was all excited to tell him that, I was applying for art history major. And he was like, please don't do that. So that was a big reality check for me.
Yeah.
And I was kind of stressed about my future. You're 19, you don't really know what you're going to do, what life's going to look like for you. And I didn't want to struggle all my life. So I just changed gears and pivoted and studied marketing and public relations. After I studied that, I worked in the corporate world for 5 years, but I was miserable. I hated it so bad. And that's when I decided, I was like, oh, no, I'm too young to be this resentful of my life. And I decided to do that first big leap where I just, after a year, so I planned it out. I'm a person who really plans out things. So I am spontaneous, but it's always I take risks, but calculated risks. So it took me a year to plan out my exit strategy. And then I went for a full year to study the business of art at Christies. And my goal was to have an art gallery, actually. So I went there, I studied a full year. I worked in art galleries in Europe. Then I came back to Canada, worked in art galleries, worked in art fairs. and started working with artists. Also artists, I was really selling well in galleries, and artists were coming to me for tips on, like, do I need a website? At that time, social media was starting, and like, should I have a Facebook page? What should I do? You're selling so well at the gallery. Can you give me tips on how to sell? And it really just happened very naturally that I was helping artists, and then some artists became my clients. And yeah, fast forward to today, I have a business that's called The Artist Entrepreneur, and I consult with artists all over the world to help them grow their visibility, grow their credibility, and sell more of their art.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like a fantastic journey. I'm curious to know, when you say you studied at Christie's, that's Christie's, the auction house, or the one that we would know as the auction house. So
yes,
what was that like? Because to my mind, Christie's is this, it's always in the news where a painting that's sold for the most of any painting in history for so many X millions of pounds or dollars, and it's really an elevated and very narrow part of the art world. I'm just curious to know what the reality of that is when you're working in that kind of environment and the kind of people that you're around, and what you learned there. How was that environment different from the corporate environment that you'd come from?
Oh my God, it was so different from the corporate environment, and it's so refreshing. But, also, I mean, Christie's is a corporation, right? So in many ways, I mean, they're part of a holding. They have shareholders. Christie's, the reality of a Christie's auction house, as opposed to working in a gallery, art gallery. Even when I was in Montreal, I was working in one of the top 3 galleries in Montreal. We were still only 4 or 5 employees, right? So it's still like, even there, like the difference in mentality or in what the stakes are so big. But to get back to my experience living in France and studying there, I'm ashamed to say, because I have 2 children that I love so much, but it was probably one of the best years of my life that I spent there. I do love my children, and having my children were probably also the best years of my life, but being at Christie's and studying there was also quite an amazing journey for me. Just meeting the people, understanding how the art market works, who are the people there that makes the art market what it is today. And it really helped me get a good idea, and also just when I see artists who have this mindset or this belief that you can't make money selling your art, you can't make money as an artist, the fact that I started at Christie's and I saw that firsthand, that there are people who will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars for art, gave me the confidence, right, to bring this back to artists who are maybe starting out or mid-career, who think that they can't sell a $5,000 or $10,000 painting, to say, absolutely, it is possible. There are people out there who are interested. It's just that you need to position yourself in a way that makes it attractive to them, right? So and it was the same thing when I was selling in art galleries. I used to sell, $85,000 artwork over the phone, and people were like, how is that even possible, right? Well, it's all about how you position yourself, how you brand yourself, and how you're showing up for a client, because people who pay $5, $10, $85 or $1,000 or pounds, they have a certain expectation of how you're going to show up in terms of service, in terms of quality of product, in terms of even just the brand, right? The brand is very, very important. So that's really what I learned while I was there, how to position yourself so that you can attract the right clientele for your work.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really exciting, but also intimidating. And I wonder how elite is that, in terms of, is it something that any artist has the potential of achieving, or is there something special about the artists who are at that level? And I'm coming at that from two angles. One is it that they're exceptional artists, and how much of a role does the quality of the art play in being able to charge that kind of money for your work, versus how much of your, as you're saying, your branding, your positioning play in the work that you're doing?
That's an excellent question, and there's like a few layers in your question. So
I'm sorry, I'm terrible.
Maybe I will forget. So,
No.
so maybe I will forget. If I forget, prompt me again. Okay. So the first thing you asked is like, this is catering to the elite, and is it accessible to everyone? So I think, and that's a conversation, it's such an interesting question because it's actually a conversation I had. I have a group, the Artist Entrepreneur Lab. So it's a group program, and we meet every week and we talk about different things that are the group like to grow their business and getting them forward. And it's actually something we talked about recently when we were talking about your vision as an artist. So I come back to that often. What is your vision? Because if you don't have a clear vision of what it is that you want, right? What is that message that you want to bring to the world? Then if you're not clear on that, how can you expect anybody else to get it, right? If you aren't clear on what you have to say, nobody's going to understand, like nobody's going to be able to do it for you. So, and when you're getting clear on your vision, that's where you need to ask yourself, who is it that I want to work with? I think the number one question I get the most from artists is, I can't figure out who my target audience is, right? And I like to flip that question because I can't find my target audience. I say, well, instead of trying to find someone like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, how about asking yourself, who is it that you want to serve with your art? Right? Because I hear this all the time. Oh, I don't know any rich people. And you know what? I don't trust rich people. I don't like to be around rich people. Now I need to get in front of rich people to sell my art. And I'm like, what's the point? Didn't you build this art business because you wanted to do something that lights you up, something that you want to do? Yeah, well, if you don't want to be around these people, first, maybe I would question what are the beliefs that you have around rich people, but that's a whole other podcast topic. But then who is it that you want to serve with your art? Who is it that you want your message to come to touch? And these are the people you want to reach, right? So that's a question that first, like when you're even starting your business plan, you need to ask yourself this question. So no, not everybody should or needs to cater to that very high-end range of buyers, right? And another thing, there's a lot of data in the market that exists. If you want to market to the very, very high-end market, then these people buy through dealers, they buy through galleries, they buy through consultants. So if your vision for your art is to do everything yourself, sell online, do your own events, you don't want a third party, then you don't have a fit to work with these people, right? So we need to be lucid about what it is that we want and if it all fits in together in a business plan. So I don't know if does that make sense, Jeremiah, what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's very interesting. I love the way that you flip it around. It's who do you want to serve? Who is it for? One of the reasons I'm talking to people like yourself about essentially the business of being a creative is that money is a very complicated subject, well, for everybody, but I think it becomes particularly complicated when you're a creative person because you have an interesting relationship with money because it's something that you need, but often it's something that we don't have the skills to know how to generate income. And also there's often a sense of guilt around about promoting ourselves and trying to earn an income from our work. Whereas when you flip it around, instead of who am I trying to sell this to, who am I trying to serve, it changes that relationship somewhat. And it then isn't necessarily about how much money I can make, but who might respond well to this work. And then there might be some money on the other side of that equation, but the money isn't forefronted in the equation.
Yes, and that's when everything comes together, because when you know who you're selling to, then you can create products. Like, you can't see me doing the air quotes right now, but products, because depending on who you want to work with, then there'll be a price range that these people can realistically afford, right? And then you can create products or services that are aligned with your artist vision, with your creative vision. And then people will want to buy them and will be able to afford them because the fit is there. And you asked me also, is it about talent? It's certainly about talent also. I mean, yesterday I was giving a conference at an event, and there was there was a gallery owner who was there also. He gave a presentation right before me. And he said, and I wrote it down in my notebook because I thought it was so interesting. He said, if you don't have the seed to create like a crazy person, then there's no future for you. Okay, so he said, because he was talking about, he represents 25 artists, and he says, all of the 24 artists I represent have a little bit of something wrong in their head. Like, they have to be crazy a bit to create with the intensity that they create, right? Because there's no other option. If they're not creating, they can't imagine doing anything else. Right. And all the clients I have, all the artists I talk to, it's the same thing, right? They have this place in their heart where they have to create. So when I ask them, like, whether you make money or you don't make money, would you still continue? And they're like, of course I would continue if I weren't making money. But the goal is, I want to create more, but I need to bring income to be able to create more. And that's really how we work together to create a cohesive plan where the brand and the people you want to serve, the products and services and sales channels you use, right, and your branding strategy all comes together so that the person who experiences your work can't help but want to buy it.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. So clearly then, this identifying who you want to serve with your work is a critical question, but you've been using the word brand quite a lot, and I'm curious to know what does that mean to you in terms of what is it in the way that you're using it, and what does it mean to people on the other side? So an artist is creating a brand, but what is that supposed to do for them? What's that supposed to communicate to a potential customer or client?
So again, coming back to my example to the gallery owner yesterday, he was saying artists need, to make it, they need money, they need time, and he wasn't able to put a word on it. He was like, they need that je ne sais quoi, that visibility, that he couldn't put the word on it. And I was just sitting at the front row and I was whispering, brand. But he would never use the word brand because it's very taboo, right? Artists are like, I don't want to brand myself. I'm not a product. What does that even mean? Okay. And I think the best way that I've heard a brand described that makes it really simple is, a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay. So it's basically, what is it that you're all about, but really, why is your work interesting, right? Why are you and your work interesting, and why should I care? So we talk about having a cohesive body of work, and why is that important, right? We want to be able to recognize the work, because, instead of saying, I want a, instead, you want the buyer to say, instead of saying, oh, I'd like to buy a piece of art for my home, to say, I want to buy and your name comes after. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? That
yes,
you become and say, hey, have you seen this artist? I just love what they do. They do this, they do that. They're all about this. They're all about that. Right. So some artists, build their work around their spiritual practice. Some of them are more pragmatic. They've went to art school. It's like very art history oriented. You can have a brand that really, there's as many brands as there are artists out there. It's more about owning who you are and getting really, really clear on your why and your vision so that you can communicate it back to your audience and they get it. If they can't repeat to a friend at a coffee shop what you are all about because they're following you on Instagram and they love what you're all about and they can't really repeat it, explain it to somebody else, then you failed with your brand.
Okay, that's an interesting test. Yeah, that's really interesting. I love that idea of people saying, I want to buy your name versus a piece of work. That's a really interesting shorthand. But there's also, in a lot of the interviews I've done with artists, is a hesitancy to put themselves at the front. And they want it to be all about the work. And I just want the work to sell itself. I want people to buy the work. I don't want to be the person in front. I don't want to be pushing myself forward. So I'm just curious to know how you would respond to an artist talking in that way.
Well, I would not respond. I would challenge where that is coming from, where that that kind of, because it sounds to me when artists tell me that is either because they have a negative perception of what auto promotion is.
Yep.
They have maybe a little bit of trouble with their own building their confidence. So maybe there's a little bit of an imposter syndrome there. And then right now people are listening to this and they're like rejecting what I'm saying. And they're saying, no, that's not it at all, Catherine. You don't get it. I just don't want to promote myself. I don't like to be upfront. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Not a lot of people do, like I don't know a lot of people about, okay, maybe a handful of lifestyle bloggers, but I don't know that many artists who wake up in the morning and they're like, yay, I couldn't wait to do another Instagram story, right? And I think, and it's normal, but I think it's about finding a balance that fits for you. And it doesn't mean promoting yourself doesn't mean having to do 25 selfies on Instagram every day, right? Because maybe that's not your brand at all. And maybe your audience doesn't care about your selfies, right? So it's more about connecting, engaging, building relationships. But if you're not showing up, whether it's online or offline, because I know we talk a lot about online, but being visible in your community and getting people to know you in your community is, in my opinion, the first step. But if you're not showing up, how can you expect people to know you, right? And because the 3 steps of buying is knowing you, liking you, and then trusting you, right? So you need to go through these stages for someone to buy from you.
Could you go over those again? Yeah. That's great.
Yes, absolutely. So if you want someone to buy from you, and I didn't invent this is like basic sales 101, they first need to know you, because obviously you can take any product, services, whether it's a commodity or a high-end product like art. If people don't know you, there's absolutely 0% chance that they're going to buy from you. The second one is once they get to know you, they have to like you, right? If they don't like, and when I say like, I would say if they don't have this emotional connection with your why, okay, if they don't believe in what you have to say, if they don't think you're genuine, if they don't there's no fit there, if it's not aspirational or interesting, or like basically if there's no emotional connection, they're again not going to buy from you, because let's not forget, art is a luxury product. So people need to have that connection. If they don't like what you stand for, right, and that again is your brand, they won't buy from you. And I think the biggest error that most artists make is trying to please everything and everyone by diluting what they stand for. The artists who are making it right now are the ones who are really clear on what they stand for. And if you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. You can go buy from somebody else. But these people, it's so clear what they stand for. It's so clear what their values are. It's so clear what their message is with their art that they attract the right fit of people and they buy from them. So first they get to know you, then they need to like you. And once they like you, then they need also to trust, because we think artists are insecure people. Trust me, people who buy art are even more insecure. Okay?
Really?
Because there's no information out there about, like, is this artist an actually good artist? Am I making a good decision? They're very insecure about what they're buying. So our job is to educate them. And again, the gallery owner yesterday at the conference I was giving a talk to said the same thing. He said, we have such a big job to educate the public on the value of what we're offering, because most people don't know. They feel intimidated by art because they don't know. So they don't want to ask the questions. And what happens? They don't show up and they don't buy. So it's our job to build that credibility, to build that trust factor by, educating people on what contemporary art is. What is the life of an artist? When you see an artwork that's $10,000 and people are like, oh, that's outrageous. But then you realize that, maybe the artist is paid $5 an hour when you calculate all the time that it took to create the piece. And not just that, but all the experience they had to build to be able to create that piece, right? So there's education that needs to be done. And then also building your credibility by having PR opportunities, right? Getting shows, getting some recognition by the market. That's how you build your credibility, your trust factor. And that's how people become more confident and purchasing art from you, and it's the same thing for an art gallery, right? So a gallery owner has to do the same thing, go through knowing, liking, and trusting before a collector will invest in the artist that they represent.
And when you say people need to like you, do you mean they need to like you as a person? Do they need to like your work? Or do they need to like what you stand for?
I would say that it's pretty much I think you just nailed the perfect trifecta, because I think the first thing, everybody I talk to, the first thing they need to like the art, okay? But for some artists, you don't like the art right away, because there's more to it than what you just see first glance, right? Yes. And that's really what makes an artwork powerful. So if you want to bring the person who's in front of the art to the next step of the experience, you usually have to have a conversation, right? There needs to be education. You need to go deeper into so first, the aesthetics of the artwork needs to touch. So that's number one. Okay. If you want to be an artist that grows through time, is not just like a one-hit wonder. Absolutely. The first thing that gallery owners, curators, art consultants, and buyers, it has to be about the art. But then, would you buy from someone that if you start having a conversation, the person annoys the heck out of you and what they stand for, you don't believe in, right? So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And it's the same thing through a gallery, right? If you go into a gallery and nobody's looking at you, nobody's talking to you, nobody's offering you any support in understanding the art, chances are you're going to walk through, and unless you're very intentional about buying, you're going to leave as quickly as you came in. So, and my point here is not, again, looping back to what I was saying earlier, is not about saying you need to be likable to everyone and everybody needs to like you and all of a sudden you have to become popular. That's not at all. And I think that's where the misunderstanding lies when it comes to branding. It's about being really focused on what it is that you believe in, what you stand for, what is the message you want to come across, and hit on that nail consistently so that people get it. And the people who get it, who have that emotional connection, they'll come to you and they'll be interested in the work.
Right. Fantastic. And because a lot of the examples you've been using are from the fine art world, and I know a lot of my listeners are working in the craft sector, and I'm wondering if you feel that this is relevant across sectors, whether you're in fine art, sculpture, craft, architecture, design, illustration. Are these sort of universal principles, or are they specifically useful for the high end of fine art?
I think they're absolutely principles that apply. And when I said at the beginning, you need to know who you're talking to make sure that your message and who you're talking to, there's a connection. So I've talked to a lot of artists who have, Etsy shops, and they're more in the arts and crafts and things like that. And the ones who are, because I did a podcast interview once where I said that I was very skeptical about how successful you can be selling only through Etsy. And I said, if anybody's listening and you're successful on Etsy, please email me. I want to talk to you. So I've had people email me after that and say, hey, I'm successful on Etsy. And I've asked them to come and talk to some of the artists I know. And they were saying the same thing, right? They developed a niche. And instead of trying to please everything and everyone, they got really, really clear on the niche they were developing, who it was for, right? And that's what made it for them, because they built a community. It was about building relationships, building community around what it is that they were creating. And they surrounded themselves with like-minded people. And these people were the first one to raise their hands and say, yes, I want to buy when they put something out for sale. You were talking about design, about architecture. Imagine if you're, you submit an idea, a project, and your project is a little more expensive than another project because you highly believe in having an eco-friendly project, right? And for that, your costs are a little bit higher than maybe your competitor. Well, if the person in front of you cares, right, shares the same values as you, believe in this, they might be willing, to negotiate with you and say, yes, I believe in your project. I'm willing to pay more for it because this is what I want. And the other person, their values don't fit with what my vision is, right? So I think it applies in all contexts. I think we underestimate. I think it's a misconception that everything is always about money. Okay. I think we're really moving towards an era where values are very important. People want to work with like-minded people. They want to buy from like-minded people and who share the same values as them. And that applies in art, in craft, in design work. I've worked with all kinds of artists from all walks of life. And it's really, what I hear is, I met with this collector or I met with this client and we hit it off. We have the same vision. We have the same ideas. I bounced and ideas and I brainstormed, and everything I said, it was, spot on with what their vision was. So and then I put a price out there and they didn't even blink, and then I hear, I should have asked for more.
That's fantastic, because I think what it does is, when you're talking about values, then it shifts the focus, like you say, from just earning money, but it's finding someone who's responsive to what you're doing. And I think that helps with attention that certainly I feel, and I know that other people I've spoken to feel the same, is that by looking at my creative business or my practice looking at my creative practice as a business, that I'm somehow selling out or I'm compromising the integrity of my work. But what you're saying is actually, there's a way of doing it where the integrity of your work actually becomes a feature that makes your work more relevant, more interesting, more valuable to a potential audience. If I have that right.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, what's the point? And, you know, I have nothing against artists who want to stay hobbyists, by the way.
Yes.
If you don't want to put yourself out there, if you don't want to promote your work, well, that's totally fine. Keep it in the studio, create. And, you know, sometimes I hear artists who aren't ready to sell the work yet. And they feel this pressure because people tell them, oh, it's so good, you should sell it, and blah, blah, blah. And it's totally fine if you're not there yet. You get to decide, right, when you're ready. And if you wanted to turn it into a business, then you need to understand what are the dynamics of having a business, right? It can't be like, I want the cake, I want to eat it too. Like, I don't want to promote myself. I don't want to put myself out there. I want to spend all my days in the studio. I don't want to talk to anybody. And you know what? I want to sell. Like, it's just at some point you need to kind of accept that having a business, there are going to be some sales component to it. There's going to be some marketing, but it can all be done in a way, and it should be done in a way that is align with who you are, what you believe in. Otherwise, you're going to be as miserable as you are presently in your day job. Because, by the way, having your own business is probably the biggest inner work that you'll ever be doing. Because in terms of personal growth, having a business just puts a mirror right in front of your face, because there's nobody there to tell you what to do. You have to create the plan, and you have to follow through. You don't have a boss that comes and hits you on the shoulder and says, where's that report I asked you 3 days ago, right? You need to figure all that out. Yeah,
you're solely accountable to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I guess means it's also easier to hide, which leads me to my next question, because you do a lot of PR, and all these things that we're talking about sound like an awful lot of work. And like, for example, I've done a lot of work in television, and when I'm doing a TV series, I can focus solely on my character and my performance, and I don't have to worry about the rest of the production. But I know that while I'm doing that, while we're filming, there'll be someone else who is doing all of the PR, laying all the groundwork for. They're doing press releases, and they have a media campaign in order to raise awareness of the show that's going to come out. And I'd never have to do any of that, which is great. But when now I'm at a point where actually I'm going to have to start doing that for myself. And a lot of people listening might be interested in doing the same thing of having to maybe relaunch their brand. Maybe they're inspired by what you're saying and say, yeah, you know what? I need to refresh everything that I'm doing, and I need to launch myself again, re-alert the world to my existence and my work. But it is so much work, and they don't have someone else to take that on. What's a good place to start?
Okay, that's
I know it's a big question.
I know, but it's a good question because I hear that a lot. So a couple of things. Okay,
and
first,
and to add to that is also, how do I do this and still make the work? I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So the first thing, when you're starting an art business, some people think it's going to be 90% creating the work and 10% business. When you're starting, it's about a 50-50, okay? About, the business and the art. But really, when you think about it, if you're sitting down and doing maybe 20, 25 hours, really focused on your artwork, it's probably more than you're doing right now. Okay, because I'm not talking about looking at cat videos on YouTube and going to get another drink of coffee or talking to your studio mates. I'm talking, if you're doing 20, 25 hours of actual creative work, it's more than most artists do, if we're being really honest here. So how do you get started when you don't have a team? So the first thing is accept that things are going to take longer than you expected. Okay, you need to accept it. You need to just accept it and stop hitting yourself over the head that things are not going fast enough. Stop comparing yourself to people who are ahead of you. There's always going to be people ahead of you. There's always going to be people behind. Just follow your own path. And third, let your ego, okay, let it go. Let go of the ego and focus on the task at hand. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second, you're doing probably too many things, and that's why nothing is moving forward. Okay, so you're doing a little bit of Instagram. I should be pinning on Pinterest. Oh, I should get some PR. Oh, somebody told me I need to have an email list. And you're doing all of those things, but you're just like sprinkling over everything without really saying, okay, this quarter, this is what I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to go all in on this to get the results that I want. Okay. And you need to, okay, I don't want to go into too many details, but once you get clear on what your area of focus is and what you're going to go all in on, you need to get clear on what data you're going to use to measure your success, and then do any tweaks and pivots if you need to along the way. So that's so focusing on one thing, and then understanding also, and that's when you need to be really wise on your pricing strategy. I don't know anyone who's built a successful business without having to invest in their business. Okay. So if what you're selling merely covers your costs and covers like your basic, even a salary, then you will never be able to invest in the business, grow the business, and bring team members on board. Okay, so look at your dream artists or artisans or designers online. They're not doing this alone. They do have a team. They didn't necessarily start with a team, but when the business started growing, right, they reinvested in the business. And since they had tried and failed at different things, they knew what was working, what wasn't. And then they invested to get people on board to grow the aspects that they need help with, whether it's through capacity, so getting an assistant in the studio, or maybe getting some social media help or some PR help, et cetera, right? Having salesperson, having someone help you get the gallery representation that you want, et cetera, right? So I think we need to start small, focus on the things that are going to move the needle. Don't try to do everything. What is your zone of genius? What are you good at? Is it one-on-one relationships? Then get to know people in your community, show up, build your network. Are you really good on Instagram? Then focus on building your Instagram. And step by step, things are going to take much longer than you expected, probably, maybe not. I hope I'm wrong, but you'll build something, and then be wise about what you're doing with what you're building and reinvest in the business to grow it instead. And if you're like, well, I'm selling, and still I'm not making ends meet, then there's probably something wrong with your pricing strategy that we need to look at.
Right. And these are things that you can help artists with.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is what I do every day in group settings, and through coaching and through consulting also. I even have people on my team who offer services to artists who cannot necessarily have team members, but they need help with some copywriting, social media. So I have people on my team who we can delegate work to help our artists grow, because we're all in my team, we're all art market driven. So we all understand how the art market works, how selling art is very different than selling any other type of products or services. So we really understand it. So we can really make the right recommendations for that specific artist. And we work with artists who are just starting out in our group programs, and mid-career artists as well.
Fantastic. Wow. Okay. This has been absolutely brilliant, Catherine, because you've kind of laid out an overview of, it really sketched out the overview of the art world in terms of there's the high end of Christie's stuff, And then there's the rest of us, but there are principles that apply across the board. And what's lovely about the way that you're talking about business and sales and self-promotion is that it feels like a more natural and genuine process as opposed to an artificial one that I have to be a salesperson and put on a shiny suit and go and glad hand a bunch of people at galleries. It's more about being really clear about who you are as an individual and as an artist and what you have to offer, and then making that the message as opposed to, hey, buy my stuff.
Absolutely, because that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Like, because think about it. Do you want to buy from somebody who says, hey, buy my stuff?
No. Yeah.
No, I don't. No, not because I don't want to buy their stuff, but what's in it for me? Like, I don't care. And a lot of people, artists, forget that they need to think about what's in it for the person that's in front of them.
Absolutely. That's a great other question to be asking ourselves as we go through this. Absolutely. What's in it for the person on the other side? What are they getting from this? So it's not just me getting a sale, they're getting a piece of work that they can be proud of and that reflects, as you say, their values, something that they believe in, which is really lovely because it enhances then your understanding of how people buy your work relate to that work, and then goes back to those questions about what kind of people am I trying to serve with it. Brilliant. So Catherine, I know you need to go in like 2 minutes. So really quickly, do you have an action step or a challenge that you could set for our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm just about to step out this interview and go into the Artist Entrepreneur Lab, where we're meeting to do a quarterly planning session. We do that every quarter. So I was inspired to set a challenge to your listeners to also do their quarterly planning, because I think the best time frame to plan your work is on a 90-day cycle. So I think also in the show notes, we'll offer some of my guides. So if you download my guides, I also explain how to do some 90-day planning. So it's a 3 steps. I'm going to really simplify it for you guys. It's a 3-step process. So your first step, you know how I said earlier that I don't want you to be doing everything. I want you to focus. So one, I want you to set your area of focus for this quarter, for the next 90 days. Decide what your desired outcomes are and how you're going to measure success. Okay, so that's your first step. Set your area of focus. What are your desired outcomes? No more than 3. And how will you measure success? Second, I want you to create a plan. Okay, what is going to be your strategy to get to that success that you've identified? Okay, so I want you to map it all out, right? If you like to do mind maps, if you like to do lists, if you like to have a Trello board, do it as you want, but create a plan that you're going to roll out in 90 days. And remember, things take always more time than you expect. So put that in perspective. Okay, so someone once told me, when you first do something you've never done before, estimate how long it's going to take you, add 20%, and then double it. Okay,
oh, wow.
So take that. Okay. And third, don't expect willpower alone to get you to the results that you want. So I want you to set up some accountability. Okay, get an accountability partner, join a business community group, come join our lab if you want to, ask for a friend, a mentor, someone, okay, to be your accountability so that you don't rely on willpower. Because once resistance hits, and it will, because if you've made an ambitious plan and you're getting out of your comfort zone, resistance will come in and test you. You will need that accountability to follow through. So step 1, set your area of focus. 2, create your plan. And 3, set up some accountability.
Brilliant. That sounds so clear and so practical. And yes, that's fantastic. Thank you. I'm really excited to hear how people get on with that.
Are you going to do it?
Yes, I have to now. Yes, I will.
You do.
Yes, I will. Thank you. So Catherine, this has been absolutely delightful. Where can people find you online and find out more about you and your work and the services that you offer?
Well, they can visit my website, theartistentrepreneur.com, or come find me on Instagram at Catherine Orer. I'm there almost every day. Shoot me a message. Let me know that you've heard this podcast interview. Let me know what you thought about it, and I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. This has been so useful, just packed full of really great insights and practical steps that we can all take. So thank you very much for making the time to speak with me.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Hey there! Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Practical Creative. If you'd like to learn more about Catherine and her work, you can visit the Practical Creative website at thepracticalcreative.life, where you'll find more about her work and links to all her materials. And if you'd like to have a go at Catherine's challenge of setting a quarterly focus, you can find a written version on the Creative Challenges page. Just head on over to the website and check it out. And if you've enjoyed this episode of the Practical Creative Podcast, it would be great if you would subscribe to the show and even leave a review. I'd also love to hear what you found to be exciting, inspiring, or even challenging about these conversations. You can contact me via the website at thepracticalcreative.life or on Instagram at practicalcreative. Until next time.